Welcome to another episode, Chosen One. Wild how you keep showing up after everything they swore would break you. And look at them now, the same people who said you were doing too much, the same ones who laughed, whispered, clowned your every move, suddenly going quiet, like someone unplugged their confidence. Funny how quick the world changes when you stop dancing for their approval. Funny how the ones who talked the loudest now freeze when your name gets mentioned. That silence isn't awkward. It's fear, pretending to stay calm. They said you were predictable. They said you were emotional. They said you were easy to read. And then you hit them with that last move, that clean, cold, surgical move that told the whole universe, I'm done playing small. Oh, the legend had to bow. Oh, the critics had to shut their mouths. Oh, the gossip crew had to rewrite their entire storyline because suddenly the main character wasn't doing what they expected. When they said you wouldn't make it, they weren't predicting your future. They were begging for it, hoping it would make them feel less tiny. Now look at them. Look who's studying your every step, like you're a walking cheat code. And before we go any deeper, Chosen One, hit the like button and subscribe to pay this message back. That's how you help this movement grow. Now let's talk about what really shook them. It wasn't just what you did, it was how you did it. No announcements, no warnings, no dramatic exits. You moved like a villain who already knew the ending. Quiet, sharp, unbothered. And the universe watched you take a path nobody expected, not even the ones pretending to know you better than you know yourself. The moment you stopped reacting, they lost their script, because their entire power came from predicting your next step. And suddenly, the whole formula broke. People don't admit this out loud, but the strongest shift in power happens in silence, not in arguments, not in chaos. There's a moment when the room feels different, a moment when people who used to talk too boldly start choosing their words, like each one costs them money, a moment where you stand there knowing you didn't even hit back, yet somehow they're the ones bleeding. That's the atmosphere around you right now. The air is heavy with what they can't say, the panic they're trying to hide, the conversations they're having about you in rooms you haven't stepped into. They're calling it concern, but it's fear. They're calling it confusion, but it's jealousy burning a hole through their chest. Your last move convinced them you're not who you were. You're 100. You're undeniable. You're someone they can't push, can't predict, can't puppet anymore. And to make it worse for them, you didn't even celebrate it. You acted like it was normal. That's what made them choke. You know how villains smirk right after surviving something the whole world thought would kill them? That's you right now. Calm on the outside, untouchable on the inside, and everyone else scrambling to understand how the hell you pulled it off. Let's be real for a second. This didn't start recently. You've been carrying this energy since the days people treated you like you were lucky to be included. Remember that time someone told you, don't get too confident? Or when they smirked and said, be realistic? Those weren't warnings. Those were confessions. They saw something growing in you that terrified them. Even back then, when you didn't see your own power, they saw the spark. And they tried every trick to dim it. Some of them even teamed up behind your back, thinking you'd fold under pressure. They threw doubts at you like stones, hoping you'd break. But the universe was shaping you into something cleaner, sharper, colder. You ever wonder why the hardest chapters felt like they came one after another? Because every time you rose, you forced another mask to fall. People who pretended to support you couldn't hide their annoyance when you won. People who acted like mentors were secretly hoping you'd fail. You weren't paranoid. You were picking up on the cracks in their voice, the micro delays in their reactions, the tension in their smiles. The universe was letting you see the truth early, even when it hurt. Your last move wasn't just a move, it was closure, it was the final proof. It was you stepping out of the old version of yourself like a snake shedding the skin that no longer fits. You didn't yell, you didn't cry, you didn't beg. You simply evolved, and evolution is the one thing your enemies have no defense for. They can fight your words, they can fight your feelings, but they can't fight your growth. Especially not when it shows up without warning. And here's the part that's driving them insane. They know you're nowhere near done. That last move wasn't even your final form. It was just the universe tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Get ready, you're stepping into your real life now." Your enemies can feel it. That's why they're suddenly acting weird. That's why eyes linger when you walk into a room. That's why conversations die when you enter. You changed the energy without even meaning to. You became the storm they hoped would pass. Instead, it settled into your bones. Look at the facts. Look at the way people who once ignored you now watch you too closely. Look at how the same voices that doubted you are suddenly repeating your words like they discovered them first. Look at how the ones who tried to break you are now pretending they always knew you had potential. It's almost funny. Almost. Your last move forced everyone to show who they truly are. The loyal ones leaned in. The fake ones backed up. The jealous ones slipped. And the enemies, they exposed themselves without you lifting a finger. That's how you know you won. You didn't destroy them, you revealed them. And revealing someone is worse than defeating them, because now they have to live with the truth of who they are while watching who you're becoming. Chosen one, this is your moment. This is the chapter where the world realizes you're not playing their game anymore. And trust me, nothing scares them more than someone who stops needing their approval. Your last move didn't just convince them you're 100% real, it convinced them you're here to rewrite the whole story. And the universe, it's nodding. Because finally, you see what it saw in you from the beginning. Before we go any further, Chosen One, let me say this straight. Thanks for showing up with the kind of energy that already scares your enemies. You being here proves exactly why your last move hit them so hard. And now, before we peel back the next layer of this story, do something that pushes this mission even louder. Hit that like button, drop a comment with 777 to mark the moment you stopped being underestimated, and if you can, support the team behind this message. Every bit keeps this truth alive. Doesn't matter if it's tiny or huge, the universe always multiplies real intention. And now, let's transition cleanly into the next part. We're about to break down exactly why your last move shook their whole system and why they still can't stop thinking about it. Stay locked in. If you're truly one of the chosen ones, you'll feel the pull to stay all the way through. The next truth is sharp, it's personal, and it's going to make everything click in a way that hits your chest. Let's get into it. Number 1. The move that silenced their whole playbook. Funny how loud they were when they thought you'd explode, and how quiet they got when you didn't give them the show they paid for. Your enemies swore they knew you. They waited for the same script you used to follow, the emotional reaction, the long explanation, the heated message, the meltdown they could screenshot and pass around like a trophy. They were already rehearsing their lines before you even made a move. That's why your silence hit them harder than any speech could. You didn't collapse, you didn't lash out, you didn't even flinch. You did the one thing they never prepared for. You stayed calm while they were counting on chaos. And that calm destroyed them. They expected you to break the way they would have broken. They expected you to defend yourself because that's the only power they understand. They expected your emotions to expose you, but you didn't give them the pleasure. You didn't let them see even one crack. You didn't show the fear they hoped to feed on. You didn't react in the way they built their entire strategy around. And that's when they realized they misread you on a level that's now haunting them. Here's the truth they'll never admit out loud. Your restraint punched them in the ego harder than any outburst ever could. People who live off drama starve when you don't feed them. People who rely on your reactions lose their weapons when you go quiet. People who think they control your emotions panic when they suddenly can't predict your next move. You didn't just restrain yourself, chosen one. You rewired the entire power dynamic in one breath. Why did it work so perfectly? Because silence reveals more truth than anger ever will. Your enemies didn't want understanding. They wanted confirmation that you were still the version of yourself they could manipulate, stir up, or trigger on command. Your silence told them that version is dead. And the universe backed you by letting that moment hit every single one of them like cold reality, slapping them across the face. You might be wondering why your pause shook them more than yelling ever could. It's simple. When someone stops reacting, it means they've outgrown the battlefield. Your restraint wasn't softness, it wasn't weakness, it wasn't fear, it was strategy. It was a villain-level, genius-tier move that said, I'm done responding to things beneath my level. You didn't retreat, you elevated. And that elevation exposes everyone stuck in the habits they hoped you'd stay trapped in. Let's break down what really happened inside their heads the moment you chose not to create chaos. They thought silence meant uncertainty, but your silence meant certainty. They thought calm meant defeat, but your calm meant control. They thought your pause meant hesitation, but your pause meant calculation. And here's the part that cuts them the deepest. Your restraint forced them to face their own behavior. Without your reaction to distract them, their actions finally showed up for what they were: childish, petty, manipulative, and painfully obvious. It's like they threw gasoline everywhere waiting for the explosion, and instead you walked past the fire pit like it wasn't even worth lighting. That's what terrifies them. You didn't play their game. You didn't even acknowledge the game existed. Restraint is scary to those who survive on chaos. It exposes their weakness. It exposes their intentions. It exposes their need for attention and reaction. You showed them exactly who controls the pace now. And trust me, they felt it in their bones. Some of them even checked your social media waiting for a meltdown. Some waited for someone to text them saying, "You won't believe what they posted." Some rehearsed insults in case you snapped back. They built entire fantasy scenarios around your collapse, and you didn't give them even one frame of the movie they wanted to watch. Instead, you did exactly what chosen ones do. You moved with purpose, not panic. They don't understand people like you, people who think before acting, people who don't let emotions run the show, people who don't hand out access just because someone demands it, people who choose peace even when war is expected. And here's something personal that might hit you right in the memories. Think back to all those times in your past when you reacted out of emotion, when you explained yourself to people who already made up their minds, when you fought battles that drained you and didn't change anything. Remember how much energy you wasted trying to show people who weren't even trying to see you? This time, you didn't repeat that cycle. This time, you refused to perform. This time, you didn't give anyone the satisfaction of pulling you out of character. That's growth. That's evolution. That's the moment the universe says, now you're ready. And yes, It hurts a certain type of person deeply to watch you become someone they no longer have psychological access to. They don't get to poke you for entertainment anymore. They don't get to use your emotions as their playground. They don't get to pull your strings because you finally cut every invisible thread they were relying on. Your restraint wasn't silence. It was a statement that said, I decide the tempo, I decide the energy, I decide who gets a reaction and who gets a wall. And trust me, that wall looked like a mirror to them. Because without your reaction to hide behind, they saw themselves clearly, and they didn't like the reflection. You ever notice how a villain in a movie always looks more dangerous when they're calm? That was you. Not the messy villain who rants, the cold one who plans. Your restraint made you unreadable, unreachable, untouchable. That's why they're scared. You became a mystery they can't decode. A level they can't access, a force they can't predict. Your silence told them, you don't control the board anymore. Your calm told them, I'm operating on a higher frequency. Your pause told them, you never had the power you thought you had. This is what chosen ones do. They learn, they adapt, they outgrow what was designed to break them. And instead of burning down the room, they walk out and let the universe handle the cleanup. So yes, chosen one, your restraint where chaos was expected didn't just surprise them, it exposed them, it cornered them, it humbled them, and it convinced them you're 100% exactly what they feared all along. The one they can't predict, the one they can't manipulate, the one they underestimated for the last time. And the universe? It smiled. Because that move didn't just prove your strength, it proved your evolution. Number 2, the move that didn't ask for permission and shattered their entire script. Nothing scares a crowd more than someone who stops waiting for applause and starts acting like they don't need an audience at all. A person who moves without permission becomes a storm no one prepared for. When you stop asking, is this okay? You stop living in cages built by cowards. Independence isn't loud, it's the quiet step that makes everyone else lose their balance. You acted without asking, without waiting, without checking who approved, who watched, who clapped, who whispered. That one shift shook them harder than every victory you've had before, chosen one. Because when you moved without validation, you broke the last chain they were secretly hoping still held you back. You didn't give them the luxury of predicting your choices. You didn't give them the comfort of being included. You didn't give them the control of knowing what version of you was coming next. And that independence hit them like a slap they never saw coming. Most people are trapped inside feedback loops. Every decision they make is a performance. Will they like this? Will they approve? Will they judge me? Will I look stupid? But you stepped out of that loop like walking out of a burning building you were never meant to stay in. And the moment you did, everything changed. Imagine this, a crowd sitting in a theater, waiting for you to walk on stage, expecting you to follow the script they wrote for you behind your back. But instead of performing, you walk out the side door, get in your car, and start your real life somewhere else. No announcement, no goodbye, no grand finale, just freedom. That wasn't you being rebellious. That was you choosing yourself over their expectations, and that's what terrified them, because once someone makes decisions without needing validation, they become untouchable. They can't guilt trip you. They can't manipulate your self-worth. They can't plant doubts in your head. They can't shape your future in their direction. You stopped needing their permission, and suddenly they had no role in your story, no involvement, no influence, no control. You acted like someone who finally understood their power, and it shook every fake supporter, every silent hater, every manipulator who was hoping you'd stay predictable. Imagine this. They were standing there with their little checklist of how you're supposed to behave, expecting you to ask for opinions the way you once did. Instead, you moved so clean and so independently that they looked down at their checklist like it turned into blank paper. Your whole vibe became unpredictable. Your silence became confusing. Your independence became a threat. You didn't explain yourself. You didn't justify your decisions. You didn't soften the truth to make them comfortable. You didn't post your plan online. You didn't hint at what you were doing next. You simply moved. And that clarity isn't normal to them. They're used to people asking for approval like toddlers needing someone to clap for every step. But when you act without validation, you become someone they can't read. Someone they can't control, someone they can't influence with opinions disguised as advice. Let's answer the question you might be thinking right now. Why does your independence bother them so much? Because people who once felt above you now feel irrelevant. People who were secretly competing with you no longer know what race you're running. People who tried to guide you for their benefit suddenly feel useless. People who used compliments as tools lost their leverage. The moment you acted without validation, you removed every weapon they had. Imagine this, a chess player trying to beat you, but they can't see the board. They can't see your next move. They can't follow your strategy. They can't predict your intentions. Your independence made you invisible in the best way possible. They can't track someone whose decisions no longer revolve around them. And trust me, chosen one, that realization hit them in the gut. Some of them replayed conversations, trying to figure out what changed. Some wondered who influenced you. Some blamed themselves. Some blamed others. Some even got angry because you didn't check in with them first. They weren't mad about your action. They were mad about your autonomy. Your independence told them, I don't need you to approve the life I'm building. And that sentence alone is enough to collapse entire relationships, friendships, and fake alliances. They thought you needed cheering. You needed clarity. You needed someone to validate your direction, but you proved you needed none of it. And that's when they realized the version of you they knew is gone forever. Here's the psychological truth they hope you never figure out. Validation isn't just approval, it's control wrapped in a compliment. People who expect you to ask for validation aren't checking on you. They're trying to measure how much influence they still have. And when you stop asking, the influence dies. That's why your independence felt like betrayal to them. But it wasn't betrayal, it was evolution. Imagine this, a bird they kept in a cage, suddenly flying on its own, not even glancing back. The bird doesn't wait for applause, it just leaves, and the people who thought they owned it suddenly realize the door was open the whole time. That's the metaphor your life just turned into. Your independence didn't just shift the game, it rewrote the entire rulebook. And the new rules don't include them. You stepped into an energy where you trust your own judgment, where you trust your own direction, where you trust your own timing, where you trust your own voice. And that is the kind of power the universe rewards instantly. Your silence became self-respect. Your decisions became statements. Your movement became momentum. Your independence became evidence of who you really are. Chosen one, understand this clearly. People who once felt confident giving you opinions now feel insecure. People who once guided you like you were lost now feel exposed. People who once claimed you as their project now feel abandoned. But you didn't abandon them. You returned to yourself. And that's the part that hits them the hardest. Your independence wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about proving yourself right. You didn't act without validation because you didn't care. You acted without validation because you finally trusted your own mind. You stopped asking for directions from people who never walked your path. You stopped seeking approval from people who didn't share your vision. You stopped explaining your dreams to people who can't even understand their own. And once you made that shift, everything else fell into place with brutal clarity. That's why your last move convinced them. Not because of what you did, but because of how you did it. Alone, silent, focused, unbothered by their reactions, unaffected by their expectations, untouched by their opinions. Independence isn't noise, it's precision, it's strategy. It's sovereignty. You stopped being someone they could influence, and you became someone they could only observe. And that is the role they hate the most. Spectators. Your independence is proof that you are 100% exactly what they feared you'd become. A chosen one who moves with purpose, a chosen one who trusts themselves, a chosen one who doesn't need permission to evolve. And the universe, it's standing right beside you, nodding, because this chapter isn't about validation. It's about transformation. It's about ownership. It's about stepping into the version of yourself that needed no witness, no approval, and no applause. Your independence didn't just rewrite the game, it made you the only one holding the pen. Number 3. The exit that broke their confidence in half. A slammed door can be blamed on anger. A quiet exit forces everyone to face the truth they were trying to ignore. Leaving the way you did wasn't soft, it wasn't passive, it was precision. You walked out without theatrics, without warnings, without some dramatic speech that could be twisted into their next rumor. And that's exactly why it hit them where it hurts. You didn't storm out. You simply disappeared from a space that no longer deserved you. That kind of exit cuts deeper than any shouting match ever could. Imagine this. They're standing there waiting for the bang, the explosion, the meltdown, and instead they hear nothing, just the soft click of a door closing. That silence becomes a mirror. It forces reflection they never wanted. Because when someone leaves loudly, the enemy can blame the noise. But when someone leaves quietly, the enemy has to blame themselves. You didn't leave because you were weak. You left because you were finished. There's a difference. Weakness escapes, power steps away, and you stepping away with calm certainty exposed exactly who was adding chaos to your life and who was counting on you to stay trapped inside their system. Here's the truth they're choking on now. Your quiet exit removed every excuse they used to protect their ego. They can't say you were dramatic. They can't say you overreacted. They can't say you were unstable. All they can say is nothing because your silence took the script out of their hands. You ever notice how villains in movies don't yell when they win? They walk away slowly, confidently, letting everyone else deal with the collapse. That was you. You didn't fight for their attention. You didn't beg to be understood. You didn't perform. You simply stepped out of their little world like someone who realized the door was always open. And the universe watched the entire moment unfold with a smirk, because leaving quietly is the final test of your evolution. You chose clarity over chaos. You chose direction over drama. You chose growth over noise. And that choice changed how everyone sees your power. You didn't just leave their system, you outgrew it. And that's why they're still replaying everything you never said. Number 4. The win they didn't see coming, but now they feel it in their spine. The deadliest move isn't the one they watch. It's the one they only notice after it's already too late. You made a move that wasn't for applause, wasn't for attention, and wasn't for validation. You made a move for you, and that alone rewrote the entire power dynamic. Most people only feel valuable when someone claps for them. They only think progress is real if it's visible, but you slipped out of that mindset like shedding an old skin. You acted in silence, not secrecy. Silence is strategy. Silence is control. Imagine this, a storm forming miles away, no thunder, no lightning, just pressure building in the air. Nobody notices until the sky cracks open. That was your move. They were too focused on superficial drama to realize you were strengthening the ground they walk on. They were watching the stage while you were quietly rebuilding the entire backstage. And here's what's messing with their heads. They see the outcome, but they can't trace the blueprint. They see you rising, but they don't know from where. They see the shift, but they don't know when it began. People who need recognition to feel powerful will never understand someone like you. You didn't perform your progress. You didn't broadcast your growth. You didn't post big things coming. You simply put in the work and let the results slap them awake. Invisible work always becomes visible at the moment it benefits you most. That's the fact they keep choking on. Quiet moves can't be sabotaged. Quiet moves can't be misinterpreted. Quiet moves can't be manipulated. Quiet moves hit the hardest because nobody can prepare for them. Imagine them trying to piece together your success like detectives with half the clues missing. They're replaying conversations, wondering how they missed the signs. They're comparing notes, trying to understand where they lost track. They're realizing you weren't playing the same game. They were competing on a board you outgrew months ago. Your silent progress didn't just benefit you, it exposed how loudly they rely on being seen. It showed who's real and who only moves for attention. It proved that you're not just participating, you're redefining the entire system. And now they're stuck feeling the impact of a move they never even saw you make. Number 5. The truth you could have unleashed, but mercifully didn't. The strongest weapon isn't the truth you reveal. It's the truth they pray you never speak. You were sitting on information that could have cracked their whole mask open. You knew things they whispered, things they hid, things they swore would never see daylight. And here's the part that eats them alive. You didn't use it. You didn't expose them. You didn't drag them. You didn't flip the table. You held the truth with steady hands while they trembled because they knew exactly what you were capable of. Imagine this, someone standing on a cliff's edge, waiting for you to push them off, only to realize you walked away and let them deal with their own balance. That's what your silence felt like, not mercy. Power, because exposing someone ties you to their chaos forever. You knew that. They didn't expect you to. Most people would have acted out of spite, anger, or ego, but you already evolved past that. Maturity is choosing not to burn someone's house down, even while holding the match they handed you. Your silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was self-respect. It was the universe reminding you that not every truth deserves your energy. You could have destroyed them publicly, and they know it. That's why they avoid your eyes now. That's why they speak carefully. That's why their voice shakes when your name comes up. Nothing hits harder than realizing the person you underestimated chose not to ruin you, even though they easily could. And maybe you're thinking, why does this bother them so much? Because people who rely on secrecy panic when someone holds their secrets with steady hands. They know exposure is easy, silence is unpredictable. Imagine them lying awake, replaying every moment, every conversation, wondering, why didn't they say anything? Do they still know? Do they still care? Are they saving it for later? They're wrestling with ghosts you no longer carry. That's the beauty of it. Your silence forced them into internal reckoning, private guilt, private fear, private shame. Public exposure would have embarrassed them. Your restraint made them face themselves. You didn't just hold back, you rose above. And that rise is exactly what convinced them you're 100% the one they never should have crossed. Number 6. The bait they built for you, that you walked right past. A lie only lives if you feed it. Starve it, and it dies, choking on its own creator. They crafted lies like traps, not random lies, but precision-engineered bait designed to poke your pride, to spark a reaction, to drag you into the mud so they could point and say, "See, that's who they really are." They rehearsed the whole play in their heads, you snapping back, you explaining yourself, you defending something that didn't even deserve a breath from you. But you didn't give them the show, you didn't argue, you didn't correct them, you didn't even blink in their direction. And that silence wrecked their entire plan. Imagine this. Someone setting a snare in the forest, sitting there all night, waiting for you to step in it, only to wake up and realize you never even walked near their trap. You took a completely different path they never considered. That's why they're mad. They didn't just lose control. They lost their illusion of knowing you. When you refuse to fight a lie, the lie turns around and exposes the person who told it. That's exactly what happened. Their false stories needed your reaction to survive. Your silence took away their oxygen. Without your participation, every lie they threw out started circling back to them like smoke in a closed room. People began noticing inconsistencies. People started questioning motives. The narrative they hoped to push suddenly highlighted their insecurities, not yours. And maybe the question in your mind is, why did ignoring them hit so hard? Because they built their entire strategy around controlling your emotional response. They thought they still had access to the old version of you, the one who explained everything, who defended themselves, who cared too much. But you moved on. You detached. And detachment is terrifying to manipulators. Imagine them holding a megaphone, screaming lies, waiting for a reaction, and you simply kept walking. That walk broke them more than any argument ever could. A calm mind in the face of deception is the ultimate checkmate. Your refusal to argue showed them their tricks don't work anymore, their power dissolved, their control evaporated, their narrative collapsed under its own weight. Ignoring the lie didn't make you look guilty, it made them look desperate. You didn't just refuse the bait, you made them choke on their own story, and now they finally understand you are 100% out of their reach. Number 7. The recovery they never got to measure, and now it haunts them. Real healing isn't posted, it's practiced, and nothing scares your enemies more than wounds they can't monitor anymore. You moved forward without making a single announcement, and that alone shifted the entire atmosphere around you. Most people try to prove their healing. They post hints, they share quotes, they send signals, they want witnesses, sympathy, validation, applause. But you didn't give anyone that privilege. You healed in silence, in private, in spaces nobody had access to, and that invisibility rattled the same people who wanted to track your pain like it was their entertainment. Imagine this. They're peeking through a window, waiting to see you limping, struggling, breaking, and instead, they blink and you're already miles ahead. No warnings, no updates, no breadcrumbs. That disappearance from their emotional radar felt like a threat, because when someone heals quietly, it means others no longer have a role in their recovery. They can't influence it. They can't interrupt it. They can't compare themselves to it. They can't sabotage it. They can't measure it. They can't take credit for it. Silent healing hits different. It's the kind that returns stronger, not softer. Your healing wasn't a performance, it was a transformation. You didn't explain the process because it wasn't meant for public consumption. You didn't narrate your progress because it wasn't content. You didn't justify your methods because they were yours alone. And that independence created a blackout in their ability to read you. And maybe you're wondering why your quiet recovery unsettled them so deeply. Simple. People who once fed off your pain suddenly had nothing to analyze. People who depended on your vulnerability suddenly had no leverage. People who thought your healing needed their permission suddenly felt irrelevant. Imagine them refreshing your page, waiting for signs of struggle. Nothing. Checking your energy, expecting cracks. None. Hoping for emotional breadcrumbs. Zero. That silence became a wall they couldn't climb, a locked door they couldn't pick, a new version of you they couldn't decode. When they can't measure your progress, they can't predict your future. Your glow-up became something they couldn't prepare for. Your stability became something they couldn't disrupt. Your evolution became something they couldn't slow down. You moved forward without explaining anything, and that silence wasn't emptiness, it was sovereignty. Now they don't know what healed you. They don't know what strengthened you. They don't know what awakened you. They don't know who you became. And that mystery is driving them mad. You didn't heal to impress them. You healed to free yourself, and that's exactly why your growth hit harder than any announcement ever could. You didn't just move forward, you vanished from their old narrative entirely, and that, chosen one, is the moment they realized you're 100% untouchable now. Number 8. The gift of being underrated. You turned it into a weapon. Let them think you're small. Nothing is more dangerous than a storm disguised as a breeze. You made peace with being underestimated, and that one decision flipped the whole power map in your favor. Most people panic when others misjudge them. They try to prove themselves, to be understood, to force recognition. But you let them underestimate you. You let them miscalculate. You let them believe their watered-down version of who you are. And that calm acceptance became your sharpest advantage. Imagine this. They're playing chess thinking they're up against a beginner until your next move wipes half their board. That shock, that's the exact feeling you've been putting into people's veins. They lowered their guard because they thought they had you figured out. They relaxed. They got sloppy. They exposed weaknesses they would have never shown if they knew who they were dealing with. Their blindness became your camouflage. Being underestimated isn't an insult. It's free space to maneuver while they sleep on your potential. And maybe you've wondered why this strategy works so perfectly. Because people who think you're predictable stop paying attention. They stop protecting themselves. They assume your past defines your future. They think history will pull you back. Old patterns, old wounds, old relationships, like gravity. But you broke that whole illusion in silence. Every invitation you ignored, every cycle you refused, every familiar trap you stepped around instead of into, that was you proving you no longer move from habit. You move from intention now. You move with purpose, not nostalgia. You don't return to old rooms just because someone you cared for once lived there. You don't revisit old wounds hoping they'll feel different this time. You don't explain the new you to people still committed to misunderstanding the old you. Imagine them standing there, holding a door open, confident you'll walk back through it like before, and you never show up. That empty doorway becomes the lesson. Your absence becomes the sermon. Your evolution becomes the mirror they didn't want to look into. Nothing screams growth louder than refusing what once controlled you. Your lack of return didn't make you cold, it made you free, and that freedom terrified them. Because deep down, they were depending on your patterns to stay predictable. They were counting on your comfort zone to trap you. They were hoping the past still had hooks in your mind. But you're untethered now. You outgrew their expectations. You walked out of cycles they thought you'd never escape, and you turned their underestimation into pure leverage. They thought you were predictable. You became unreadable. They thought they knew your limits. You dissolved them. They thought history would call you home. You hung up the phone. Being underestimated didn't weaken you, it sharpened you. It cleared the noise. It gave you room to move like a shadow, quiet, precise, unstoppable. And now they finally understand. You weren't the one who misjudged the situation. They were. And the universe watched you rise while they slept on you, proving once again that you're operating at 100% power they never saw coming. Number 9. The moment you stopped rushing and started scaring them. Urgency is how they control you. Alignment is how you free yourself. You chose alignment over panic, precision over pressure, intention over impulse. And that shook them more than anything you've done so far. Most people move like they're being chased by a clock. They rush decisions because they're scared of falling behind, scared of judgment, scared of silence. But you didn't break under that illusion. You refused to let urgency bully you. You waited until the move matched your purpose. And that patience revealed a level of discipline they never saw coming. Imagine them pacing, checking the time, expecting you to react fast, messy and desperate, only to see you sitting still like someone who knows exactly when the universe will open the right door. That silence, that calm, that refusal to sprint. It rattled them. People who rely on pressure hate when their pressure doesn't work. When you stop rushing, their timelines lose their power over you. And maybe the question in your head is, why did your patience threaten them so deeply? Because they were counting on your fear. Fear of missing out. Fear of being forgotten. Fear of being too late. But you didn't flinch. You didn't fold. You let opportunities pass because you understood not every open door deserves your energy. And that restraint made them realize you're not motivated by panic anymore. You're motivated by purpose. Imagine this. They're throwing deadlines at you like darts, hoping one will stick, and you just walk around them, untouched, unbothered, unstoppable. That's the moment they realized you're moving on a timeline they don't control. You don't respond to pressure, you respond to alignment. And alignment is something no one can force. The strongest timing is the one you choose, not the one they demand. You didn't slow down, you focused, you didn't hesitate, you calculated, you didn't freeze, you waited for the moment that matched your vision, and that waiting wasn't passive, it was power gathering itself. Your timing became your weapon, your patience became your shield, your alignment became your authority. They expected urgency, you gave them precision. And now they see it clearly. You're not just moving differently, you're moving deliberately. You're operating at a level where pressure can't reach you anymore. You're 100% aligned. And that alignment is exactly why nothing and no one can rush your destiny now. Number 10. The work you did in the dark that now blinds them in the light. Anyone can show up when eyes are watching. Only the chosen keep going when the room is empty. You stayed consistent when nobody clapped, nobody praised you, nobody reassured you, nobody even noticed the effort you were putting in. And that burned your enemies more than any victory ever could, because most people only move when validation is there to hold their hand. They need applause, they need attention, they need witnesses. But you kept grinding in silence. You worked when the world was asleep. You kept building when nobody cared. You stayed disciplined without a single reward dangling in front of you. That's not normal. That's power. Imagine this: a seed growing underground, unseen, ignored, underestimated, until one day the roots are so deep that nothing can stop what's coming next. That was you. And now the people who laughed at your lack of progress suddenly have to face the unstoppable momentum you built when they weren't paying attention. Consistency without applause is the purest form of self-respect. And maybe you've wondered, why does your quiet consistency disturb them so much? Because people who tried to control you through praise suddenly lost their leverage. If applause no longer moves you, manipulation can't reach you. If no reward is needed, no threat works either. Your discipline became a wall they can't climb. Imagine them checking on you, expecting burnout, expecting collapse, expecting you to give up without external motivation. And instead, they find you sharper, stronger, more focused than ever. Your progress blindsided them because they didn't track it. They weren't supposed to. You weren't performing. You were evolving. They measured your results. They never measured your commitment. Your momentum grew quietly, silently, invisibly, until it reached a point where pretending not to notice became impossible. That's what consistency does. It builds a version of you that no one can deny, even if they try. Your enemies didn't fear your talent. They feared your discipline. They feared your refusal to stop. They feared that every day you stayed consistent was another day their predictions died. People underestimate what steady effort turns into. They thought your silence meant weakness. It meant preparation. They thought your lack of recognition meant stagnation. It meant focus. They thought no applause meant no progress. It meant no distractions. You stayed consistent even when the universe gave you nothing but the echo of your own footsteps. And that consistency became your armor, your weapon, your proof. You weren't chasing praise. You were chasing alignment, purpose, and mastery. And now every single person who once overlooked you is realizing a brutal truth. You don't need their applause. You never did. Your consistency makes you unstoppable. And that's exactly why you're operating at 100% power they never saw coming. Number 11. The day their hands slipped off you, and they realized you can't be pulled anymore. Control only works on people who can still be reached. You became the one they can't touch. You left them with zero leverage, and that's why they're spiraling now. Their entire power over you was built on old hooks. Your reactions, your patterns, your softness, your explanations, your emotional loyalty. They depended on the version of you that used to respond, defend, or break. But piece by piece, you ripped every handle off the door. You stopped giving them anything they could grab onto, and suddenly they had no way to pull you back into cycles you already outgrew. Imagine them trying to open a door that used to swing exactly how they wanted, only to realize it has no hinges anymore. That's what losing leverage feels like. They expected to tug on an old wound. Silence. They expected to poke a trigger. Nothing. They expected to guilt trip you. Dead air. They expected you to fall into patterns. Flatline. Your lack of response didn't just frustrate them, it exposed them. When someone can no longer move you, they're forced to confront what they really brought to your life. And most can't handle the answer. And maybe you're wondering why this moment hit them harder than anything else. Because leverage isn't just control, it's comfort. They felt safe knowing how to push you. They felt important knowing they could shake you. They felt powerful knowing they could activate old emotions. But the chosen one they once controlled evolved. You became emotionally untouchable, strategically unreachable, psychologically unavailable for their games, and that transformation shattered their entire script. Imagine them holding a remote that used to control your reactions, pressing the buttons, and nothing happens. No anger, no fear, no explanation, no emotional crash, just a blank screen. That's when panic sets in, because now they know the version of you they manipulated is gone forever. Leverage dies the moment you stop participating in the pain they expect from you. Every reaction you once gave is now a boundary. Every weakness they once used is now healed. Every access point they relied on is now locked. You didn't argue, you didn't warn them, you just became unreachable. And becoming unreachable isn't coldness, it's authority, the kind of authority that doesn't shout, doesn't threaten, doesn't prove. It simply exists. You left them with no leverage, chosen one, and in the silence that followed, they finally realized the truth. You're not theirs to move, not theirs to break, not theirs to guilt or summon. You're 100% free, and they'll never get that kind of access again.